I now wish to talk about spacers. Whilst there are a number of commercially available spacers, I prefer to make my own. The advantage being that I can utilise any waste mount board, matching the spacers with the mount board used to enhance the object. I can also make them to an exact size, using either 3 or 5mm foam board, and I glue the mount board back to it, basically acting as a facing, and then this is cut to size. It is important that we have a gap or an airspace between the mount board and the artwork and the glass itself. There are 3 main reasons for this. Firstly, to equalise the temperature and humidity across the face of the artwork. Secondly, by doing so, it inhibits the growth of mould. And finally, it greatly reduces the chance of the transfer of the image to the glass. I will now show you the procedure for making my own spacers. You will recall that we float mounted this artwork onto this mount board in a previous demonstration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to match the mount board that I have here and the mount board to cut the spacers. First of all, I need to calculate the width of the spacers. I do this by taking my frame, glass and backing, placing them all in the actual frame itself, and then measuring the distance required at the edges. In this case, I believe that we should use a spacer of around about 15mm. So as I said, I cut a piece of mount board to the required size. I also cut a piece of foam board, and in this case 3mm foam board, to exactly the same size. By placing one on top of the other, I can now get 4 strips of spacers out of this piece of mount board and foam board. So I then take my ATG gun and I actually tape and I glue the mount board onto the foam board. What I need to do then is I need to measure the strips. As I said earlier, the strips need to be 15mm, so I take my ruler and mark 15mm along the side here and on the bottom here. So I've worked out the width of my spacers should be 15mm, and so as you can see here I've marked 15mm along the edges, and so I can line my ruler up to cut the strips themselves. So now I have my 4 strips ready to use as the spacers. I'm going to actually put the strips across the top first. I do that because if the adhesive fails, they will still be supported by the side strips. So I put my measure on the inside and then I cut the strip to size. So now what I need to do is I take my ATG tape and run the ATG tape down the side. I put the strip in and then I use my artist bone to actually make it secure. You will see from that the actual strip is hidden behind the sight edge of the moulding. If I'd used any thicker foam board, if I'd used 5mm foam board for instance, then it would have stood proud of the sight edge and I would have had to put an extra window mount in to hide the edges of the foam board. We can use the ATG gun in this situation because we are well away from the artwork itself. As I said earlier, no pressure sensitive tape should be allowed at conservation level. However, in this case, because we are well away from the artwork, we can use this sort of tape. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finally put that into place. And that is the glass held in with the spacers. Then the artwork fits snugly on top, and that is the artwork spaced well away from the glass. And as you can see when you look round the sides, what I like about this process is that the mount board from the actual mount itself actually transfers round the sides, and there's no obvious or no glaring misfit between the spacer and the artwork and the mount board itself. There are times in conservation framing when we are concerned about the off-gassing or out-gassing of materials used in framing. Certainly the sealing method does help a great deal. One of the most important things is to actually seal the frame itself, or seal the rebate of the frame, to stop any off-gassing from the wood components of the frame. So this is how we do it. We use this frame sealing tape and we cut it into lengths and to the length required. And then what I do is to take the back off. As you can see here, it's best to kind of pick the back off with a knife. It's easy to do so. There we are. And that reveals the tape itself. And in here we have an aluminium strip which helps stop any transfer of off-gassing from the actual rebate of the frame into the framing package itself. What I now need to do is I need to place the sealing tape in the actual rebate itself, and what I've done is I'm lining it up with the top all the way along, and then taking my artist bone, I need to actually secure it in place, taking care in this corner not to break the seal. There we have the frame sealed, so no particles can leach from the wood itself into the framing package. And so now we can place the artwork in there. What we need to do is to use a backing board. That is our conservation frame.